There is a huge and wild world of comic books coming out based on existing properties. Usually, these are popular pre established IPs, but not always. This time around, we're going to explore the weird world of supernatural comics and ask everyone's common question of wait, they make supernatural comics? The supernatural comics have hopped around to a few different publishers. They started out with Wildstorm, made a few miniseries, and then DC Comics bought out Wildstorm, and DC Comics made one Supernatural miniseries. From then on, we've had a long hiatus. The show ended. They had a spin-off show. That show ended after one season. And then just randomly out of the blue, Dynamite Comics decided, hey, we're going to announce a new comic book series from the world of Supernatural. And everyone went, huh? It was just a random day that they decided to do it too. And if you've been following Dynamite for a while, you know that they just do these random IPs sometimes. But that doesn't matter. This was a new entry into the small but respectable amount of comics that Supernatural had. Time will tell if this will be the first comic to break the mold and not be a mini and go for longer than 6 issues. But for now, let's go through each comic mini and I'll tell you which ones are worth your time. Supernatural Origins is the first comic. Supernatural Origins was published by Wildstorm Comics, written by Peter Johnson, artist Matthew Dow Smith, with letterer Greg Thompson, and colorist J.D. Metler. As it is coined, this is a supernatural origin story. This one has John as the main character. I know there are not many other characters to choose from if you're doing a supernatural origin story, but I don't care. I don't like John. There's another moment in a comic later that will show you why my deep-seated hatred for John runs thick in these comics, but for now, just know, I do not like this character. I am biased, but I do think they still do interesting things with this comic. I honestly was expecting much worse, but this was made in the golden age of Supernatural. Spoiler alert, I still prefer the other stories because they have a bit more of Sam and Dean in them, but this wasn't as bad as I was dreading. At first, I wasn't too sure how to feel about a story where John teams up with 2 other hunters to try and hunt down what he thinks killed Mary and is hunting a hellhound. At John's level of hunting, it wouldn't seem like he's well equipped to deal with a hellhound. They are scary when they appear. But there's this twist at the end that makes everything make so much more sense. So this is slight spoilers for the comic, but one of the hunters John was working with was not a hunter at all, and it was one of the supernatural beings told to go and spy on the Winchesters. It's implied that the random person helping John is a demon, but it's never confirmed outright. He does have a hellhound, and then nothing else is confirmed from that. But he confirms to John that he's not the person who killed Mary, and there's someone else that he has to be looking for. Which is not untrue, but really not the full truth either. Obviously, this guy knows something. I assume this guy is a crossroads demon. Those guys never give straight answers. This comic is okay, it's a great start, but if you don't like John, honestly, you're not gonna like this comic at all. There's a part where Missouri helps in this, but it's a very small cameo. The next miniseries we have is Supernatural Rising Sun. Supernatural Rising Sun was written by Peter Johnson as well as Rebecca Dessertine, with artist Diego Olmos, colorist Johnny Wrench, and letterer Wes Abbott. This comic still has John Winchester as the main character, of course, but it sprinkles in the boys growing up a bit, and this comic at the very least gives a little bit of a reason for John Winchester to be so hard on the boys and why he's so aggressive in having them be the life of a hunter. Do I agree that he should have been that harsh on the boys their entire childhood? No, you will never see me agreeing with that. But I appreciate the lore that this encapsulates for the show. You can tell that the writers have a great love for the show and the lore that is explored in the show. The story follows John mostly, but it also follows the whole family, John, Dean, and Sam, as they figure out their lives in the new wake of hunting, constantly being on the road and going to these weird places. I like how this comic kind of expands and explains the reason why the boys always have to be on the road or moving places, because we've seen hunters in the show that will make places their home base, or kind of like Bobby where he just has a place to go back to, and it always made me kind of wonder why Sam and Dean could never have a place to go back to, even if just temporary. Like, besides John's relentless dedication to finding the creature that killed Mary, the boys realistically could have had a home with Bobby, but instead John dragged them through all this. However, this comic is the argument for that. It tries to weave this complex story about why that might be, other than John being like a poor father. But a reason also in this comic is that demons are always after Sam Winchester. And we had this slightly confirmed because of the buddy from college being a demon later on in the show, but we never directly saw it happening when he was young. Besides the first issue, which is a John story about going to this town that he was brought in to by a relative who needed help and finding himself trapped in the town, and goes out and kills the evil monster that is keeping everyone trapped in that town. This ultimately is a story about Sam Winchester being hunted by demons. They are after him constantly and will not let go. This comic goes to crazy, insane places that I didn't think they would have the guts to go there with a property from the CW of all places. Because, like, at one point, this comic makes you think that, like, John is contemplating shooting Sam in the head so that he doesn't have to go through these demons chasing him anymore, and so that Sam doesn't have to go through this his whole life. It's this really insane scene that makes you feel for John Winchester in this moment. He actually starts crying, and he doesn't go through with it because he sees the joy in Sam's face and he could never take that away from his son. We also see Dean forced to step up in this when John has to go and do important stuff and figure out how to defeat the monster, or the boys are left alone with someone that's supposed to protect them and it ends up being a demon. This is definitely the origin story that I like better. It utilizes all of the characters available to them in the best way possible. It's hard to write early Sam and Dean because they are literally children, and in general, I feel like comic book writers can write children in a very specific way, but like also their children going through the most horrific supernatural encounters, that's gonna traumatize them. But I like how this comic straddles the line pretty well between writing them as fun children and also knowing the characters that they are going to become. It really does feel like this is how they would act as kids. There is also at the end a short story of Ghostfacers written by Eric Kripke with art by Dan Hip. To me, it seemed a bit tacked on and just like, oh, we got Eric Kripke writing a bit of this comic type of thing. And because I enjoyed the writing of the main story so much, because it was allowed to be much more evolved than like the CW show, it did kind of lose the guess of the entire comic for me. But you don't have to read this interlude, but it is an interesting sort of piece of supernatural lore. I think it's more so just the intense tone shift between, oh yeah, John Winchester is contemplating this really heavy thing, and funny little ghost facers. Overall though, I enjoyed this comic, and I thought it would be my favorite until I read the next prequel comic, Supernatural Beginnings End. This is the last comic with Wildstorm. It was written by Andrew Dabb, Daniel Laughlin, with artists Diego Olmos, Matthew Dow Smith, and colorist Marla Martinez, with letterer Wes Abbott. This is the first comic to be about the Winchester boys. Both of them off and on, and still a little bit of John Winchester, but the main characters are Sam and Dean. This is the last time everyone is together as a family, as this is the last prequel comic before Sam goes off to Harvard. The major point of contention in this entire comic is Sam wanting to go to Harvard and John just stopping him outright, being very aggressive whenever it's mentioned, and essentially stealing his acceptance letter. And John's already being aggressive about it. He's saying, if you run away from your family, don't think of ever coming back. He's being very combative. And we later find out why, but it's the way that abusers say that they love someone, and I just don't like it. And the one thing about the show is that they never directly said that John Winchester would hit his boys. They never showed it. They never implied it. But for some insane reason, this comic, probably just to fuel everyone's John Winchester hate at the time, especially mine, John Winchester gets so mad at Sam that he just slaps him. Slaps him, punches him, he hits Sam. Either way, I just have so many words. None of them are good about this specific scene for this comic. I hate it. And you'd think I'd hate this comic the most, but it's actually a pretty good story. It understands the serious tone of Supernatural, but also that it can be a little bit silly. It understands the massive tone shifts that the show can take sometimes. And even when the show is being very silly, there's still a serious element to it that makes the show work, which is the relationship between the two brothers and just family bond in general. Anyway, everyone's working on the same hunt. Sam's very adamant after what the confrontation with John Winchester ended up being that he is not doing another hunt. I do not blame him. He claims this is the last one, and Dean has some certain feelings about that, but we move on. There's this very dramatic moment, and then Sam loses his head. Literally. I love that this is the fun kind of stuff that you can get away with in a comic book that you couldn't necessarily get away with in live action, budget permitting. I just love that they take this pre-established medium, the pre-established IP of Supernatural, and they make it fun and they make it creative in a way that you can only do in comics. They do eventually get Sam's head back on, along with many others who lost their heads. And at the very end of this comic, we see Sam leave to Harvard. An eventuality we knew would happen because, like, prequel comic, and we know what Sam does in season 1. But we do get a panel of John explaining to Dean that he does this because he loves Sam, and he knows that Sam will be the happiest at Harvard, blah, 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 blah. Like, okay, sure, John, whatever. If that's the way you have to explain it to Dean so that he stays around with you, because he really shouldn't. He just watched you hit his little brother. Just saying. Anyway, I really can't decide which prequel comic I like better between this one and Rising Sun, but at the very least I can say I highly recommend both of those. Those are the good ones. Mainly because the first one is just hard to read because I hate John Winchester. If you don't mind, I would say it's an okay read. But Beginning's End and Rising Sun both have a lot to say about the beginning of the show. It honestly furthers my love for a lot of the earlier seasons and makes me want to go back and rewatch them. So I would say that's a job well done on adapting your series when it makes me want to go back to the source material and binge it again. Supernatural, The Dogs of Edinburgh. This is the first one published by DC Comics and the last one published by DC Comics. It was written by Brian Wood with artist Grant Bond and letterer Wes Abbott. I love the familiar names that you start to grab out as you delve into comic books. This comic keeps to a key part of Supernatural tradition. It just takes a long while of time to get there. Not even period of time reading the comic, period of time as in time within the Supernatural universe itself. Because this comic takes place in 2 different times. One while Sam is traveling abroad for Harvard, and the other one is because he comes back to Edinburgh because he got a letter from a hunter that he met there, that she needs his help to solve a mystery that is going on. We learn who this friend is from the story in the past, where Sam is traveling abroad for Harvard, and while he's in the library searching for supernatural stories that exist in Europe, he is confronted by another female hunter. Also, I'm a stupid American. I don't know geography for Europe very well. If I get something wrong, whoops. This fellow hunter clocks that Sam is a hunter immediately. They flirt a little bit through this interaction, and we learn that her name is Emma, and she requests his help with a hunt that he is reluctantly dragged into, because remember, Sam gave up hunting at this point. He really doesn't want to do it, but when he's confronted with it, he really can't say no to Emma. The story from the past ends when they finish the hunt, and there's a little bit of mystery left with that hunt, so we think that the letter she sends could be to do with that hunt that happened many years ago, but there's another twist that comes in. There's a part where Dean says that he's gonna come over, and despite his fear of planes, which we get a small reference to, he does come over to help Sam. It is in a very pivotal part of the story, and I understand in that part of the story why they wanted Dean to be there despite the canonicity of him not liking planes. It's a very touching moment between brothers, and I just appreciate that he was there for the moment that Sam goes through. I don't want to spoil it because it's a really good twist in the comic, but I will say I love that we learn a different side of lore from this. I love when we mix up other countries and say, oh, this is how their hunters look like. We got a little bit of that way later on with the British Men of Letters, and I just wish that they would continue on with that. I want to know what hunters are like from every single part of the world. But I just love that look into the supernatural in different parts of the world and the different lore that comes with it. I really do like this comic, but you definitely have to remember that in the early seasons, Sam is not allowed to have a girlfriend that is not a monster. of some sort. She is a supernatural being. She can never be a normal girl. The only normal girl was Jess. I would say overall, this is a pretty good one. If you like Sam as a character, this is definitely the comic to seek out. He is the main character. Dean only shows up for a little bit. I like how he navigates being a hunter, reluctantly so, in a strange land. He doesn't quite know the layout, but he's still willing to help people. Here we are, finally, we are out of the grueling hiatus that was no Supernatural comics for a minute, because the comic I just talked about was published in 2011 from DC Comics. Dynamite's series was published in 2025. This is the first comic that is releasing after the show has gone off the air. The series is just titled Supernatural. It is published by Dynamite, written by Greg Pak with artist Eder Messias, colors Thiago Brando, letterer Jeff Eckelberry. One thing that I absolutely adore about this comic is that we go back to the Monster of the Week format. Every other comic had an overarching story, and while I don't mind that, I really do adore the Monster of the Week formula. And also, with the show no longer being on the air anymore and not getting that taste of Monster of the Week formula, it's the best thing they could have done. This comic goes back to season 1-ish. I would say it's more towards the end of season. I would say they're more trying to go towards the end of season 1. They had this wrong description when the book was coming out about saying how it's happening in between season 1 and 2. But that can't happen. So I'll just take it as it is and say that this comic is happening towards the tail end of season 1. The timeline really doesn't matter. We just need to know that these are new hunts that we're seeing from Sam and Dean. And I'm being selfish here when I say I would want a later season comic. The only reason I would want to see other hunts that Sam and Dean go on in the later seasons is because Castiel appears in the later seasons. He is my favorite character, and I would love to see him in comic form, but I understand why it's better to have the early seasons in comic form, and that I am extremely biased. As of writing and recording this series, it is currently ongoing by Dynamite. It's more a Monster of the Week format, with only issue 3 leaving on more of a cliffhanger. The only overarching story bringing it all together is similar to the first season. They're just trying to find John Winchester. One fun thing about the issues in this comic is that they do a similar cold open to how the show would, with someone getting killed off or a mystery being set up that the boys then have to go into the town, figure out, and kill the supernatural being. It's the perfect thing if you're feeling nostalgic for the show, but have no new media to consume, except for fan fiction, that is. So far, I'm really enjoying it, and I'm excited to see how the series closes out itself. And then within the Dynamite series, they also had a Valentine's special. I think this is great. It's a bit nostalgic for the TV shows that used to have holiday episodes. I know some cable TV shows still do the holiday episodes, but with shortened seasons happening, it doesn't happen too often with like streaming shows. And it's kind of special because comics also make holiday specials a really big thing. That it would be weird if they didn't do at least one holiday special. The Supernatural Valentine's Day special is written by Preeti Chibber with art by Pasquale Qualano. It's a story about the Winchester brothers going against an uncontrollable goddess of desire. They are here because they find out that people are dying in this town, and it happens a lot of the time after the couples break up with each other. So it's up to Sam and Dean to figure out what's going on and get to the bottom of everything. I love that this is more of an investigative comic, more than action-packed. It still has some action, but there's more investigations going on. Parts of the brothers going to door to door and just asking various people in the town what they've seen. I really love that the goddess is inspired by Indian folklore. As we talked about earlier, I love when Supernatural branches out to other countries' folklore to explain the supernatural beings. It's really fun, and it's always more creative when they decide to do that. Also, Preeti has my entire heart referencing angels at the end of this comic. It's just iconic. Thank you so much for that small dose of serotonin about even the slightest reference to Castiel. It is greatly appreciated. And there we have it, all of the Supernatural comics that are currently out. I think of all the properties of comic books that I've talked about, people are always the most shocked that Supernatural has comic books. I think this is due to the poor marketing done by the series. I think the series itself should have promoted these comics when the series was still going. Maybe a small commercial about it, maybe even during the credits, just have a small, like, hey, we're the actors. Go read this comic that's out. But then again, the show never did that for the Supernatural anime, so what do I even know? This has been. They make Supernatural comics. I hope you enjoyed. Make sure to sub, like, all that fun stuff. Especially stay tuned for next time where we'll be talking about this mysterious comic. Woo! Find out from this mysterious image what the next comic we're going to be talking about is. Thank you so much. Good luck figuring out what the mystery image is.